Not everybody's gonna be able to hold out for this perfect unpolished example because there's not a lot around anymore.
What do you think about those? The leaks might be legit, and if they're fake, they did a good job because that's what they look like. They look like real corporate photos.
I'd say that vintage collecting starts and finishes with Rolex. All right, what do you have to show me?
All right, so I bought this watch,
Okay.
and it like suckered me in, and you did go over it lightly with me over text message, right? The thing is that, man, it's so nice. I showed it to a quick watchmaker, which wouldn't be like the authority, but it was the only guy that I trust that can open it real quick for me. When he saw it, he was like, oh, like 300 red flags, but he's not a vintage expert.
What were the red flags that he?
Well, he didn't like the movement, he didn't like this, he didn't like that, and I had texted you, right? Then I showed it to my friend Eddie and Sons, which he's an OG,
Right,
he's 80 years old. The guy has seen his watches, and when he saw it, he was so shocked by it that he's like, his main reason was he said that the watch is so perfect that it scares him when it's that perfect. What I told him is that I have seen watches. He hasn't seen my yellow sub yet.
Right.
I said, I have seen watches that you just wouldn't believe.
Yeah.
You know, they're out there.
They're out there. There's not a lot of them, but they're out there. You
So
know?
have a look at the watch and just tell me what you think.
Okay, so if your concern is the movement.
Well, sorry, I didn't even introduce the watch to the public.
1680 Submariner.
1680 Submariner.
I'm not even going to look at the dial and bezel yet. Let's start with the case and movement.
So, you know, that way I can get the final, you know, maybe I did good or maybe I crapped out.
93150 with correct 580 end links. F clasp code, so that's like 81, something like that.
Okay, it's a 79. The case is
so it's like right there, you know.
Okay, this rivet, the pin that goes across the blade, is that correct? Is it supposed to have finished edges right here?
What's that?
This right here?
Are you seriously asking?
I'm just asking.
About the pin that goes.
I look at everything. I look at everything.
Dude, what?
Yeah, I do. I look at everything.
That is the first time anybody has ever asked me.
Well, you don't know me that well yet.
Shut the fuck up.
I look.
Wow. I'm not even gonna answer that question because that was like, you just asked me if like a thread in a car seat was original.
I'm that crazy. I'm that guy.
Bro.
And I feel like the watch is good.
What?
Yeah.
That was wild that you just asked me that.
I feel the watch is good, you know. Well, I already bought it, so at this point it has to be good. But
so yeah, bracelet, fine. Original Rolex.
You know, my boy Eddie was like, Eric, if this watch is all good, they never wore it. And I said, it happens. I said, I did change the crystal. The crystal had some marks, and I love the clear, nice, brand new crystal.
I mean, granted, a little bit newer, but we just sold a new old stock, or like new old stock, two-tone Zenith Daytona from the 90s. You know,
it happens.
We're sending an invoice today, like sticker on the back, like untouched, unworn. You know,
it happens.
Like, there's plenty of watches out there like that. Okay. Yeah, you don't even see any service marks in here. Yeah, original case back, 100%. Not even like a question. 1570 movement, yep. There's no way they had a question about this movement. There's just no way. Like,
well, in all fairness, the person that Eddie didn't open it, but the person that first questioned the movement and just said, "Hey, you need to be careful," he's not an expert in these watches.
Okay, but first of all, it's the correct caliber, correct everything, correct finish on the gears, on everything.
I think what freaked them out was that the main escapement spring was like I had a bluish tone.
Yeah, because it's oxidized.
That's what I thought. Because I'm like, you're confusing it with the modern ones that are blue.
So here's, right off the bat, correct case back, no service marks in the back, okay? When I'm looping the screws, the clamp screw, the detent, everything, they're untouched.
That's what I did, and it looked great.
So this watch has likely never been serviced. Like, I literally can't see any wear on any screw whatsoever, although there is oxidation in the movement. So it's like, you know, I mean, loop that clamp screw. Like, it's never, this watch I don't think has ever been opened.
Yeah,
after the movement being...
After there was that doubt, I looked at it, and I remember...
I'm not a watchmaker, but I know my movements pretty well.
And I remember on the phone what you told me, what might be throwing you off is that you're used to seeing these a little bit more of a magenta color.
Right.
And I was like, dude, it looks good to me. The only reason I called you was because this guy told me that. And I said, well, before I pay the guy, let me just do a phone a friend real quick.
So let's... so far, I see 0 red flags. Now, you do see some scuffs on the underside of the lugs, which is normal because when
you pull them off
the bracelets, the pins would scratch. And so that's completely normal and nice to see. I mean, the case back's not perfect. You know, there is scuffs. It was laid down on a table and scuffed up. You know, I don't understand why somebody is like, oh my God, it's too good. It's not perfect. It's not new old stock.
Well,
if I can get the threading in.
What he told me, what Eddie will said, he goes, you know, it's translated into Spanish. He goes,
Okay, right.
when I see these watches so perfect,
Yeah, but
I
you
get
know what?
nervous. But he doesn't see what we see all the time.
Right.
You know?
It's not new old stock. It's just very, very nice.
Yeah.
Okay, let's go to the lugs. I mean, this is just a razor sharp unpolished case. And you know what? I have actually in my pocket, I forgot, the case, your other 680
restored
was
one?
sent off to get restored, to get recut. So we can compare it
Okay.
to the two.
All right.
Okay, so there's that. We'll go through that in a second. Let me finish inspections.
Oh.
I mean, this case is amazing, but you see all of the wear, you know, like the
Yeah.
watch isn't brand new. It's,
Yeah.
you know, somebody wore it a little bit, you know, and you could even see if you loop the pinholes, you
Yeah.
know, that you could see it's never been polished for sure, but you could see.
Yeah, there's no drag or nothing.
Okay, but you could also see the stress outward from the pins,
Yeah.
you know, so it's been in there for a while. Now, the serial, 100% original.
I didn't like that the 1680 sat so low, but then again, back then they didn't machine these as perfect as they do nowadays.
These engravings are 100% factory
Yeah.
Rolex.
You saw how low it is, the 1680, how it sits on the bottom end of the case? Usually I don't see it that low.
Understand these were hand engraved.
Yeah, yeah.
And it varied year to year depending on production.
Yeah.
There's a lot of things I look for when I'm looking for originality of engravings.
Yeah.
No offense to the audience, not everything I will discuss on camera because I'm not trying to make it easier for people
Of
who
course.
are re-engraving cases. But one thing you could always look for, and considering from this era of Rolex, is that they are hand engraved in
Yeah.
the 70s. And so when you think about it, if you take this and you stick it and you start engraving, there's always going to be a start and end point.
Yeah.
So when they stuck it onto the case, you'll see that little dot, you know, and then you'll see it go around.
Yeah.
And then when they pick up,
Yeah.
you know, so that's one thing. There's a lot of things I'm looking for, but this is like, there's not even a question on
Okay.
this. Like, there's not even like, this isn't even debatable. Like this one.
I did not lose my ass.
Now, the dial,
Uh-oh, drum roll.
dude, it's
I
fantastic.
know, I love it. I love the hands.
Fantastic.
I love the hands. Everything looks really nice. It's just a really nice example.
Correct loom, that puffy loom from this era that's not zinc, but you know, not the crosshair loom. I mean, dude, look at the oxidation on the hands. Like, how can you think that's
I bought it without. What I was telling you was,
dude, this watch,
when I saw you and we were walking down the hallway,
I love this
what
insert,
what I told you was, I said, I bought the watch because my gut instinct and everything I know told me this is original without a doubt. The only reason I brought it was because I said, man, 2 watchmakers told me this.
Yeah.
And then, you know, this would be good
So,
for the audience to see anyways.
I've had problems with watchmakers in the past, you know, questioning, usually not movements and stuff like that. It's usually like they'll question something about a dial. So there's a watchmaker out in Texas who, my buddy Krill actually sold, for example, a perfect condition gilt sub or GMT or whatever. And the guy's like, "Oh no, it's relacquered and it's lacquered and sprayed and reloomed and blah blah blah." And it's like, no, it's just perfect. And
Yeah.
the problem is that watchmakers,
It's hard to believe.
they're not, but they're not also not studying dials like
Yeah.
somebody like me is. They're working on movements, you
Yeah,
know.
of course.
So if they're not used to seeing it and it's too good to be true, they think it is.
Yeah. And they rather say it's unoriginal than say it's real and it's not.
So it's funny you say that because I tell people all the time. I'm like, listen, it's very easy to say something is wrong with the watch because if you are wrong and the watch is fine, great, no harm, no foul. That's good news. The watch is good.
Yeah.
If you stick your neck out like I'm doing right now and saying this watch is good, I believe in it, I'll put my name behind it, and I'm wrong, I'm costing you money. And in the case of selling a watch for my client, I got to take that watch back.
Yeah.
So it's much harder to say this is good. It's much easier to say this is bad because if you're wrong, okay, sorry, you know?
Yeah.
But if you say something's good and they buy it or you help somebody and you fuck, that's real money.
Yeah.
So, anyways, but I've had that problem with watchmakers before, especially guys who are not quote unquote vintage experts, where they're just not used to seeing this stuff enough.
Yeah.
This watch is fantastic.
Bezel sharp. It's amazing.
It's not new old stock, but it's mint. It's very
Yeah,
nice.
really
you know, it's really solid example. Really nice watch, dude.
That's good to hear.
Really, congratulations. Really,
Thank you, man.
Really awesome watch.
I have a random question. What is the cutoff year for the red sub?
What do you mean?
Yeah, what is the last year that usually the red sub?
Like 40, so like 74?
74.
Right.
And are there any 74s that did come with a non-red dial? Is that like,
Yeah,
it's like a
it's right
crossover?
transitor. So if you go to drsd.com,
Yeah, I follow them. I mean, I watch them. I get a lot of info.
He actually, and again, all of these websites like drsd.com, like 5513matdial.com, like 1675gmtmaster.com, they're all compilations and like guidebooks. But and I was explaining
There's
this on the
variations.
phone. All of these reference websites are all data points that we have put together as collectors, you know, because Rolex is not giving us this information. So it's just everybody's doing the best they can. So for example, I was explaining this to somebody on the phone literally last night. You look at the Mark II GMT Master 1675 matte dial. So early 70s is when they were generally produced. And then all of a sudden people started seeing a batch of Mark II dials in later 70s cases. And they're like, that can't be right, an earlier dial in a later case. But then they kept surfacing, you know, barn find, original untouched watches, and now it is completely accepted, and has been for some time now, by the market and by collectors, that there are Mark II dials in a later serial batch from like, I forget what it is, like 4.3 to like 5.2 or whatever. If you go on the website, you see. So these weird things exist, and probably what happened is that Rolex had leftover Mark II dials.
Correct.
And they didn't want to throw them away.
Yeah,
so they put
you
in
know,
pieces, you know,
absolutely. There's things that happen that we don't know, and they don't give us the information, and all we're doing is try to like piece this puzzle the best possible.
Right. Yeah, and that's all you can do. There's always going to be these anomalies. Another great example is the watch that Sotheby's sold last year. It was a 6238 gold pre-Daytona, but it was a John Player special. So black Paul Newman dial with a black Bakelite bezel that you usually see in like a 6241 or 6264. How is it in a 6238? That's way earlier, doesn't make any sense. And they got the watch from a guy who's owned it his whole life, and it was in a drawer. He had it for like 30 years. He forgot about the watch. He didn't think it was worth anything. And the story, from what they were told, and like just, I examined this watch. That watch was unmolested. And if you think about it logically, if somebody wanted to put together a watch, they wouldn't put that JPS dial and Bakelite bezel into a 6238.
Gotcha.
They would find the correct case, because the watch ended up selling for under $800,000. Meanwhile, if it was in the correct case, it would have been 1.2 to 1.5.
Yeah, makes total sense.
So why would somebody do that? You know, sometimes you have to think these things through from like just like a logical and practical, pragmatic standpoint, you know? And there's things that we're not going to understand. There's things that are going to seem wrong, but might be right. You just have to do the best you can based on the information that we've gathered as collectors. And really kind of accept some kind of weird things from time to time and just enjoy the watches, you know?
Have a look. Let's compare it to the one that you just had restored for me.
So these people do a fantastic job. Obviously, if you hold them side by side, you'll see the difference in what an unpolished case and a recut case looks like. But, you know, this case, when you gave it to me, was so rounded and already lightly polished. The difference now is night and day, and you'll be happy with the watch. It's never going to be unpolished, but I'd rather have it look like this, restored to mimic the factory original bevels, than the state it was in before.
Yeah, I look at it kind of like, you know, I look at what we do also in times the same way a collector firearm or a classic collector car.
Correct.
There's times where you have something that's perfect, untouched, unrestored. But then you have a car that has a significant meaning in the hobby. Why not restore it and leave it right? Yes, there's things you shouldn't touch, but I feel like that's the body. Why not?
Great restoration in the car world adds tremendous value to certain cars.
Of course.
The watch world, it's not quite there yet. People also forget that the vintage watch market is still quite young. You know, people only really started collecting wristwatches in general in like the 90s, you know? So it's still quite young. And I think the biggest problem that the restoration, as it relates to vintage watches, faces is that a lot of times it's used deceptively. Like, so this case will get recut, but it won't be disclosed. An unknowing buyer will assume or be told this is unpolished and not understand that it's a restored case. Now, I see nothing wrong with a restored case. In fact, I'd rather, if the case was already polished, I'd rather it look like this.
And I think it definitely adds a value because, for example, we've already done the groundwork of figuring out who does it right. Who can you trust to send your case halfway across the world to get done and get it back? You know, so we already did that part. Where other people will be like, oh, okay, well, go ahead and try to do it yourself. Go and experiment with people.
For me, it's an issue of A, aesthetic, it? Do you want it to look like it was from the factory, or are you okay with a polished case? And then B, price. So an unpolished 1680 is going to be, I'm just throwing out numbers now for this watch in particular, just use round numbers, $20,000.
Yeah.
A recut one that looks amazing, blah, 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 but is recut is, let's say, $18,000. And then an over polished one is going to be $15,000.
I agree with you.
There's just levels to it, you know? And I think there's going to come a point in time where as the vintage watch market grows and as more collectors enter the fold, not everybody's going to be able to hold out for this perfect unpolished example because there's not a lot around anymore. If you want to enjoy these watches before we all fucking die, you're going to have to accept some levels of restoration on certain watches, or just move on to something else and try to find that perfect example in a different model. You know, it is what it is. None of my personal watches are all 10 out of 10s. And that's not because I don't want a perfect watch. I do. It's because generally I fall in love with watches no matter what the condition is, and you know, I take them as they come. You know, I like to own different things, so certain models, like, I can't afford to wait and hold out for an unpolished one because I might not see it again.
Of course. Or you get this one now, and when another one pops up, you change it. You know.
So no, they did a great job on that case. It's recut, but it looks fantastic, and it looks way better than it did before. It definitely added value, because I know you're not selling this watch, that you're putting the dial and everything back together, because I know it's for your personal collection, or was part of your personal collection. But the watch before, let's say, was worth whatever, $15,000, and even though you spent money to recut it, you'll have a much easier time reselling, because I think most buyers would prefer it to be that as opposed to the state it was in before. I think 99% of buyers, you know? And so not only does it add a little bit of value, but it also makes the sale of the watch, if you ever do sell that watch, a lot easier, you know, 100%.
Now have a look at this one.
All right.
This is one of my personal 5513s, and I'm thinking about parting ways because I have two of them.
Dude, you say that all the fucking
No, but I'm serious this time. I'm serious this time. I got to move some stuff around. I mean, I think it's a good looking watch. I put a glass. I have another one that has more of a yellowy hue on the looms, and then the hands have that like build up on it, which I love.
Right.
So I'm like, why do I need two of the same watches? You know how that goes.
Right.
And the case on my other one is a little bit stronger than this one. And this has a nice case. And this has a nice case.
I mean, it's not quite as crisp as your 1680 here, but it's really nice. No, this watch is great. Great.
You were going to put a price on that watch, the I don't want to sell it price. The WatchEric, I don't want to sell it price. Like, what's a number on that?
High teens.
Yeah, that's what I thought too.
High teens.
That's exactly what I thought. I wanted to be fair, you know, but I'm thinking the I don't want to sell it price, but not the wildly overpriced price, you know.
Maxi Mark III is probably arguably the most desirable.
I like them so much. I like them so much better than the regular.
If you look at them side by side to others, and they're called Mark III, for people watching at home who don't know, generally the coolest part is they're nicknamed the lollipop. So the lume dot literally connects to the hash markers, and it looks like a lollipop. And the lume dots are considerably more puffier and bigger compared to other 5513 maxi dials. There's a difference when you see them side by side, for sure. Like, especially like a Mark V, they're a lot smaller, you know. So Mark IIIs are pretty cool and pretty special. This is a great watch, you know. So, but if you have one you like more and you don't think you need to keep two, which I agree with that sentiment, because I think you keep way too much redundancy.
I'm gonna thin out my red subs.
You keep way too much redundancy in your collection.
Yeah,
you're a hoarder.
I am. I'm gonna thin out my red subs a bit, and now that I got, you know, my Grail 1680 gold, and I'm gonna thin out. Thank you so much.
Dude, everybody still asks me about that watch. And I just got another one in that actually is getting case recut, because there was a nice little gash in the case, and it was just, you know,
it was worth doing.
It was worth doing because the dial is so nice.
Yeah.
I sent somebody a picture. I'm like, hey, I'm getting the case done, you know, but here's a picture of it before if you want to see what it looks like. And he's like, Eric sold his watch? And I'm like, not the same watch. But it's got a similar like caramel brown thing.
Well, I'm glad I'm at least getting a little bit.
He's like, I thought he would never sell it.
I'm glad I'm getting a little bit more.
People still bring that watch
reputation in collecting vintage watches. You know, little by little, I'm picking up.
You'd be surprised how many people like think you're buying these watches to like sell them, and I'm like, no, dude, he hoards these things. He just loves them.
Yeah, I do, man. Like, I sit there and I'm like, but I have to like, I can't have them all. Like, I'm in the business to sell watches,
right?
You know, and then I'll justify it. I'm like, well, maybe if I just sell my Hulk, which I don't really care about, and I can replace.
You can always replace that.
And then I'll just keep this. I do this mental gymnastics for no reason.
The stuff you have in your collection, vintage-wise, is replaceable. Some a lot harder. Like all the Tiffany pieces you.
No, I don't want to sell those.
You never start getting another brand. Patek Tiffany right here.
I love it, man. But I feel that when it comes to the vintage watches, I like Rolex.
Yeah.
You know, like this watch is beautiful, but you know what I thought about? I'm like, there's gonna be another one down the road that's gonna be nicer.
I like to.
So let's just sell this and let's get ready for the new one.
I like to say that vintage collecting starts and finishes with Rolex. Like everybody's
yeah.
has their education into vintage watches, starting reading about Rolex,
Yeah.
one or two here and there. You know, even if it's like a Datejust or Date Model or Air King, whatever, and then they graduate to other stuff. And then they come back around full circle to Rolex.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, the simple truth is that Rolex produces so much more than everybody else. And there's so many different little nuances and varieties that make collecting fun.
Yeah.
Where other brands don't quite have that. Patek has a lot of it, but you know, Patek's a completely different aesthetic, type of watch, style, you know. Rolex is very laid back, cool, fun, easy, you know.
I think the one thing I need is that fuchsia bezel for the 1675. I think that fuchsia bezel, but I just refuse to pay those prices, man. I need one, man. I'll buy one, but I don't want to, you know.
I think I showed you the one.
And like I promise, I won't.
Like the fade.
I won't sell it. You know.
You didn't like the fade.
I mean, let me see it. Maybe it'll be good for now, and then you know. All right, so not to switch gears and stuff, but
talk to me.
What do you think about those? The leaks might be legit, and if they're fake, they did a good job because that's what they look like. They look like real corporate photos.
No, not only that, but like the fact that they filed the patent for the land dweller.
Okay, so let's just assume
that they're real.
Let's not, because we can, you know, let's forget about trying to solve the mystery. Let's assume they're real. What do you feel about the land dweller?
So I think, listen, it depends on.
I like the look of the watch. I hate the name.
I hate the name. I like the look. I like the fact that they're drawing from, because we just listed on the site.
Yeah, that's the Mac Daddy one.
Right.
That's the Mac Daddy one.
So I like the fact that they're drawing from the past. They're using that same case style, which is interesting, different. The thing is, people always bitch, oh, Rolex never does anything interesting. They never do anything new.
And then when they do, I know. Yeah, I filmed a video, I think yesterday, about these leaks. And what I said was that, I said, you know, yes, we got the 1908 model as a new model,
right?
But very rarely does Rolex come out with a new model that's like gonna compete with the Datejust and stuff like that. And I kind of like that they did that. Do I like the name? I think the Day-Date is a land dweller.
Yeah.
I think the Explorer is a land dweller.
I think the problem is obviously they're not going to use a quartz movement, so they didn't want to use something with quartz in the name.
Yeah, and they needed a name.
And they needed a name, have great success with the Sea Dweller, the Sky Dweller, so they're kind of like keeping that in the family.
Yeah.
I don't love the name, but I think it could be interesting.
It'll grow on us.
I think we need to wait and see the size.
That's what I said too. I'm wondering if size is gonna.
Right, exactly. I remain cautiously optimistic about that.
You know what I feel about that oyster quartz case? It's like the only version of a Rolex that we ever got that has like a Gerald Genta twist to it. Kind of gives us like that essence a little bit. It has
well,
like
I think the oyster quartz case was designed by.
There you go. I mean, I don't know. I didn't Google it. I didn't fact check that, and I feel like I would have known that by now. And if I don't, hey, you don't know everything. Everybody that thinks they know everything, you learn something every day.
The oyster quartz case was.
But if the oyster quartz case was designed by Genta, then no wonder. Yeah, you know, because it has like an AP, like a little bit of look to it, you know, the way that the case is cut.
And if I'm wrong, we'll edit this out of the movie.
Nah, but it's okay. Hey.
Manufacturer and design, particularly the case and bracelet, was heavily influenced by Genta. I thought he had something to do with it, you know?
So
I guess not.
That being said, I want to pick up on these releases. I have to ask you a couple more questions. Oh, we're going to bounce around.
Oh, I think the Texano was designed by Genta. That's where the confusion was.
Ah, okay. So then I don't sound like an idiot.
I think, yeah.
Moving on. Out of those leaks, which is the only one that like kind of got your attention?
It was the land dweller.
The land dweller?
Yeah, just because it's something new and interesting. And
yeah, I like
being a vintage guy, the fact that they're using the same oyster quartz texture style, you know, case.
I kind of like the idea of a stone dial, even though they're saying it's tiger eye, but the photo doesn't show it. It could be some other stone.
Yeah.
I like the idea of a stone dial on the root beer. I like that.
That will be a knockout.
Yeah.
If that was real.
I know.
You know, the what was it, turquoise dial Daytona? I don't care.
I don't like that. You know, if it was an all gold,
right,
with the gold bezel and the turquoise dial, okay, or Tiffany dial.
Right.
But the black bezel with the black strap, I don't know, man. It's too much going on. It's too busy for me.
If these leaks are true, the interesting thing is the land dweller and that gold.
Yeah, I was a little bit not very excited about a green dial lefty. I'm just like, I don't know, man. I feel like the lefty in the market, it kind of like very simmered down. I think no doubt it's still a cool watch.
Right.
But I just think they're doing too much by trying to put a green dial into that. Like, why don't we put a green dial in the Jubilee Gold one,
Right.
or something else? You know.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's always the same with these guys. It's
I know.
incremental change.
I know, and
Let's
copy
change
and
the
paste.
dial color. And
Yeah.
like everybody wants.
Yeah, like
it.
I felt like the green dial in the Sky Dweller was just imminent. It was only a matter of time before we put a green dial. Oh my God, it's gonna be a hit. You know, rose with the blue, yellow with the green.
Right.
Looks nice.
Yeah, yeah.
But
No, so,
the one that was to me like a turnoff, and you know, sometimes you see watches on these concepts and then you get them in person, you're like, you know what, it's nice. I don't think I'm gonna like that Tiffany on that Oyster Flex.
Yeah, I don't think
it's
so, yeah.
too much. It's
Right.
too, the contrast is too far.
yeah, I mean, it's like I think they're trying to like kick it back to like the Beach Daytona and play.
But that was
off of-
white gold.
Yes, but also capitalize on everybody wanting Tiffany colored things.
I know,
You know,
yeah.
I guarantee you, if we were able to take a peek behind the curtain and look at their sales numbers for the color OPs, Tiffany was the highest selling
Oh
one
my
by
God.
far. Not
Yeah,
even
they would have
close.
sold every single one that color
Right.
if they would have made them every one that color.
Correct. You know, so I think it's a lot of that. They're trying to like, oh, this is what the consumer wants. Let's do that. You know, so I think it's a little bit of that. Who knows? This conversation might be for naught if those leaks were fake.
Yeah.
And it's usually we see leaks like a week out. You know, this was a considerable amount of time before Watches
Yeah.
and Wonders.
I feel like now they feel the pressure
Right.
since it's leaked, and they're like, okay, so we just drop it, you know, because every other year before, the last previous to 5 years ago, you would get the watches the night of,
Right.
you know, Basel or whatever.
Right, right.
Now I feel like every brand just does a drop, and then 2 weeks later you get the hands-on at the, you know, but any moment they might do the drops. So I have one more topic I want to go over with you,
What's
just
up?
because it's like in my brain. My friend Nori the other day and another friend of mine, Michael Yee, this is a shout out for everybody there. They attended the Patek event the other day
Yeah.
for the Cubitus. Now, I get it. It's like a mixer, and you know they got these nice, cool, modern displays in there, and I think all of that is great, by the way. But I'm just gonna tell you how I feel, and then you could pose me or whatever.
Right.
Look, I thought it was cool to have this event, and you bring in these people invited. Of course, you and me weren't invited. We don't care. But-
I don't think many dealers were there.
no, I know. I was being sarcastic.
Right.
But the point is that obviously the people that were invited, because I talked to them about it, they're eating it all up. They love it. They think
Right.
it's cool, right? For me, the only thing that I don't like about it is that I just feel that when Patek throws an event like that, it's a little bit off-brand.
Yes.
It's like having your uncle that's 70 years old and he's trying to be cool, you know, and dress modern. And which, by the way, if
marshmallows and
by the way,
and
exactly. If you're the uncle out there that's 70 years old and trying to be cool, nothing wrong with that either. I'm just saying that me at least, I associate Patek as like suit and fucking tie with like this like so much luxury, and I get they're trying to loosen up, but the marshmallow and all that just makes it kind of
I feel like they should have had like an evening, like nice event.
almost
that
like a
was-
gala.
Right, you know?
Make it Patek, you know?
Yeah, it was a little overkill, I think. I was surprised to see it. You expect more of that from like AP Hublot.
Yeah, and we're not being haters,
Tap
right?
whatever.
I'm saying because I love the brand.
Right.
I just feel like it's off-brand for them.
Yeah,
you know?
You know what? But maybe times are changing. And
Yeah, I know.
Real
We could be the ones that are wrong. You
yeah,
know?
they need to cater to a younger audience, and they want to, start bringing in, newer people and the younger generation and the next generation. of
Yeah, you're
collectors.
right about that.
So, and look at, the majority of people who probably wear their Nautilus, Aquanaut, their sports models are all younger. I would say
Yeah.
the demographic, it has to be, from 20 to 50, as opposed to that 50 and older wearing, you imagine wearing the Perpetuals and the Calatravas. And
So then I guess we're the older uncles that are still stuck in our ways, and we're looking at the young
I think
kids.
I'm the cool uncle.
I'm just saying,
that's
when
my
we
niece
when
and
we look at it like this, then maybe we're the ones that are seeing the evolution,
Right.
and we're not accepting it as easy yet.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, everybody, the feedback I got from everybody who went to that event.
Yeah, the event was great.
Yeah.
I just look at it from the outside. I'm like, why are they? Maybe it's just the way that I have Patek in my head. I just feel like they're not acting like Patek. They're trying to be somebody
Yeah,
else.
Patek was the image that I grew up with. Patek was like This is the epitome of elegance and class, and you have like really made it once you own a Patek. I remember growing up dreaming of owning like even a simple Calatrava like this, just because I thought that by owning a Patek, it means that like I had the best of the best, and I was like, I made it, I was there, you know? And I think it's still great that they should be aspirational. I think like, you know, as I got older, at least for me personally, I realized that Patek, you know, it's great to have this like, you know, romanticized notion about them, but like it is a much more approachable brand, and there's cheap entry points into Patek, which people don't realize. Like you could get really cool Calatravas, stuff like that, under 10 grand. People don't realize that because they think they hear the word Patek and they're like, oh no, that's top of the top, and it's gonna be expensive regardless, you know?
And times are changing, you know, and the demographic is changing, so maybe it's just like someone like me, for example, just has to lower the guard a bit and change perspective, you know?
I think so.
That's probably what it is.
I think that's your problem.
All right, so I really got to get the hell out of here. So thank you so much for having me by here. I appreciate you always.